Today I'm going to talk to you about what it's like growing up Hispanic but not being able to speak Spanish, and also talking about what's in a name or what's in my name. So growing up, I grew up with two Hispanic parents, or so I think, Ancestrycom. But I grew up with two Hispanic parents, and a lot of times they would speak Spanish kind of to keep me out of the loop. And so their sort of Spanish was kind of like, okay, what are we going to get her for Christmas? What are we going to get her for her birthday? That kind of thing. And so growing up, of course, I knew certain words in Spanish. I knew a lot of what was going on or what was being talked about because I kind of caught up while we went. And a lot of times it was frustrating because I was never taught how to speak it. And so throughout the process of learning or growing up Hispanic, it was kind of always a little bit frustrating because I really never knew what people were saying, or I didn't know how to speak back to them. And so my dad's family is predominantly speaks in Spanish. They really don't use a whole lot of English. My mom's family, the same thing, but we were never included as grandchildren. And so if you read my blog this morning, you read about how my cousin, who's 3 years older than me, her and I were really just the two that did, we were the two very best friends who did everything by ourselves. And so that was who me and her were. But growing up on my mom's side of the family, I was kind of used as the interpreter. And so it's really funny right now, but thinking back on it. But growing up, it was really never just something we did. I know my cousin, who's super skilled at singing, she used to sing La Bamba, and she used to be like, Bamba nama nama namba, que bamba jito, la 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 la, because that's what, if you just saw that, it's Davidson, and my other cat just bumped into my computer, but that's what we thought Spanish was, is we thought it was like a lot of like mama menu, like mixed into different things, and people just knew what they were talking about. So growing up Hispanic, that's kind of what I thought it was. And so I wasn't really taught a whole lot of like, okay, well, this is how you say things, this is the correct way to say stuff. And so I wasn't given a whole lot of like, this is how you do it. I was just kind of taught like, okay, well, this is what it is, this is what it's not, which is funny that I don't speak it, because there's a lot of words in Spanish that I cannot translate to English. So people just assume like, oh, I speak Spanish fluently because I can't think of like what a trabajo is to save my life. Like, how do you say that in English? And so it's funny because certain stuff like that, and I'm sure all of my relatives are like, oh God, she said it wrong. But that's where growing up, I really wasn't taught like how to say it, and I wasn't taught what some of the words in English were either, so it's kind of a double whammy. I also grew up with New Mexican Spanish, which is different from any other Spanish. It's kind of an old Spanish mixed in with a new Spanish, and they just threw a bunch of other stuff in there just to confuse me. But that's really the kind of Spanish that I grew up with, and so a lot of times when I'm trying to go to school or I'm trying to do classes and they're teaching me Spanish, it's so different than the Spanish that I grew up with. And so they're like, no, that's not how you say it. Or growing up, I used to use the words patos for feet, and it's really just patos are like little animal feet, or that's what I was taught that they were. And so I'd be like, oh, your patas, oh, I'm sorry, patos are a duck. Oh God. See what I mean? It's that moment where there's so many times where like my Spanish gets mixed up in my brain and I don't know what I'm saying. And so if you don't know what I mean and you grew up in a predominantly Spanish speaking home and you know Spanish perfectly, or any other language for that matter, then good for you. I really hope that I can learn, and perhaps one day we'll be able to communicate together, but until then, this is my struggle with my language. And so I think it was a little hard also growing up, because not speaking Spanish, because I've always been light-skinned, light-haired. They used to call me Weta growing up, and so my dad's name they would call us Lori's Wetas, and so it's just, I've always been very light-skinned, fair-haired, so people just assumed that I didn't know how to speak Spanish, and that was a huge problem growing up in school, because the people that did speak Spanish would sometimes talk about me, and they didn't think that I knew what they were saying, and it was so frustrating because it was an embarrassment, because I couldn't kind of be like, yo, I know what you're saying. I totally can hear what you're talking about right now. I know you're talking about me, because it was kind of a mute point because I couldn't talk back to them in Spanish. I couldn't defend myself in Spanish. So it was kind of frustrating growing up for that reason. Another thing hard about growing up is in high school, I kind of was like, this is it. I'm going to speak Spanish. I'm going to be able to do this. Here we go. And it was hard for me because people would make fun of the way I spoke it, or people would say, oh, you're pronouncing things wrong, you're spelling things wrong, you're reading things wrong. So it became kind of like a bullying thing, and it was really, really hard for me to kind of express it. And even to this day, when people say, well, you can do it, you can speak Spanish, I know I can do it, I just have this fear about doing it. It's kind of like, if you had never been taught how to swim and you're like, oh, well, you'll learn along the way. Yeah, maybe, or maybe you'll sink, this is like, it's taking kind of that risk during the process. But this year I'm hoping to learn more of Spanish. As I said in my blog, this isn't a challenge for anyone to speak solely in Spanish to me, because although I know what you're saying, I more than likely am not going to be able to talk back to you. So I'm just going to be like, that's it, because I can't, I don't know enough. You have to teach me before, it's like, if you want a man to never go hungry, you teach him how to fish. And so if you want to be able to talk to me, I have to learn first. And so it's going to be a process as we go along. If any of you have similar stories, I hope you put in the comment section down below. I would love to hear them, because I don't think I'm unique to this. I think many people have gone through this throughout the time. Throughout the times of growing up. Another reason why my parents didn't teach me Spanish is that my mom was hit in school for speaking Spanish. And so it was something that they were punished by, or punished for using. And so she kind of never really taught it to us, because she had that kind of stigma of that it wasn't something worth learning. And my dad, I'm not sure if he was ever hit or anything for speaking it, but he again used it more as like, okay, let's talk about what we're going to get the girls for Christmas, or what we're going to do, or what our plans are. And so we really never used it for anything more than that. But my parents, my mom tries all the time to teach me Spanish. Sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this. And other times I'm like, I can't do this at all. And so it's quite funny, just to see the process that I've been trying to do. Now on the Ancestry.com thing, I know I said, I think I'm Hispanic, but I don't know. I've seen that a lot of those, and again, because I'm a huge YouTube fan, I've seen that a lot of vloggers that do the DNA test end up finding out that they're really not the race, or that, they have a lot of mixes of races within them. And so my dad's brother, who's my uncle, I know he did his, and I know he found out that we're Native American. We have Native American blood in us. We have a little bit of African American blood in us, and so I know that that's kind of come up. But for myself, I've been hesitant to do it because I'm nervous to kind of find out, I guess you can say, because here I am being like, oh, I'm Hispanic and I don't speak any Spanish, then to find out I'm not even Hispanic, it'd be like, what the heck? And so I'm hoping that that's not something that that we're going to do. If there's enough likes, if there's enough comments or suggestions to do it, I will go ahead and do that to kind of take you guys along that journey. But to be honest, right now, I'm not 100% sure that I can see myself doing it. So funny story. I did tell my mom the other day, because I had watched this horrible show on YouTube about how this vlogger found out that her parents weren't her parents, and it just scared me really bad. And so my mom was in the living room, and I walked up to her and I was like, Mom, are you my mom? And she was like, what? What kind of question is that? And I was like, no, like, I really, really need to know. Like, are you my mom? Or if I do a DNA test, like, is it going to come out you're not my mom? And she was like, beyond any sibling, beyond any cousin, can frustrate my mother more than anybody else. And so she was like, yes, you are my daughter. If you aren't my daughter, then I went through a whole lot for no good reason. And so I was like, oh, okay, just checking. And then I walked away. And she's like, why do you do that, Felicity? Why do you always ask those questions and then walk away afterwards? And I was like, I'm curious, that's why. And so remember Felicity's Funny Farm? I drive people to funny farms, and so play on words there. Yeah, it was funny. But so that's what, when it came time for Ancestry.com, that's the reason I haven't like 100% been like, woohoo, I'm going to do it, you guys are going to watch it. But like I say, if there's enough comments and likes, well, I'll go ahead and give it a try. Another thing about my name that I think is really kind of unique is I know Felicity is not a name that you hear that often, or it's not something that a lot of people are a trend that's catching on, although I feel progress in the later years about it. But when I was first born, my dad said, let's name her Felicidad, which is happiness in Spanish. And he said, I have a feeling she's going to bring great joy into the world. And so, yeah, like, come on, Dad. Like, it's like saying, like, oh, my daughter's going to be like the president. And so that was like that moment of my name choosing. And he was like, oh, she's going to bring happiness. But they were worried, my parents were worried that no one was going to be able to pronounce Felicidad. And so here came in Felicity. And so there's always been kind of like, I wish, and I'm sure everybody's like that. I'm sure everybody's like, I wish I'd been named something else, okay? I'm not saying I wanted to be named Daphne or like something else, okay? I can't think of any other name right now. But I'm thinking that, it's not about that I don't like my name. It's just I wish they would have kept it Felicidad, because then I'd have had like some street cred, like they would know I was Spanish. The moment I was like, hey, I'm Felicity, it's like, it's great. But then if I was like, yo soy Felicidad, they'd be like, oh, all right, this girl, she knows what she's talking about. But when I say yo soy Felicidad, they think I'm saying like, oh, hi, I'm happy to meet you, which is not what I'm saying. I'm like, no, for real, like, that was supposed to be my name. And so that's the only thing I think is hard. I was supposed to be nicknamed Feliz, is what they wanted, which is also happy, or it's not happiness, it's happy in Spanish. But my cousin, who's 6 months older than me, we grew up kind of like twins. We really grew up always together, being together. She nicknamed me Fee. And so in the comment sections, if you're reading them, you're going to see people who are calling me Fee. That's why. It's because she couldn't say Felicity, so she said Fee. And so, see, I mean, the process of Felicidad wouldn't have been that much longer. Now, when it comes to my name, a lot of people call me Felicitas, which is like an insult, because I'm like, dude, they didn't pick that Spanish name because they thought it was too hard, and you're like giving me a Spanish name. It's not even the right one. I've been called Felicia. I've been called Phyllis. I mean, like, the amount of different ways that they pronounce my name has been crazy, and so it's kind of entertaining sometimes, and other times I'm like, oh my gosh, it really is Felicity. There was a show about it back in the day. It's not that hard. But that in itself. But growing up Hispanic, I think that you're kind of given that support system. And I can say this, that I know that there's many times in which growing up I do wish that I spoke Spanish a little bit more, but I think it was kind of, I love the idea that I can, and I'm hoping that throughout this year I can show everybody that, perhaps doubted me in high school or doubted whether or not I'd ever be able to speak Spanish, that I can do it. It's just going to be getting over that, like, stigmatism. On a side note, I really do want to encourage anyone that does speak a language fluently, not to kind of make fun of people that speak it wrongly. How are we going to teach people if we can't even encourage some kind of bumps and growth? It's, of course, there's going to be times you say things wrong. There's times I say English things wrong all the time, and it really is my only language. See what I mean? Language, what kind of word is that? And so when it comes time to knowing a language fluently, please, please, please do not bully anyone when it comes to them first learning or them trying to attempt it. And so, because it takes a lot for people sometimes to kind of say like, oh, okay, this is what, I'm going to try to do this. And so try to support them and encourage them instead of, kind of being that person that maybe they never try because of, again. And so other than that, gracias por todo y hasta la mañana, because I will have another video up tomorrow, hopefully. And if not, then I hope you check out my blog. I put a lot of funny stuff on there. And oh, before I forget, so I totally forgot to include this in my blog, but my sister is just a genius at Spanish, and she really had to teach herself because she had moved away and she needed it for work, and so she had to teach herself. And I didn't put it in the vlog, in my blog, but I think she's really awesome at it, and I just wanted to give her a shout out because I forgot her, and then afterwards I was like, oh, poor my sister. And so I just wanted to tell her that she has some amazing 6 skills, and she speaks Spanish como una princesa de España. And so, other than that, te amo mucho, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Have a Felicity Funny Farm kind of day. Oh, yeah, that was bad.